my opinion, I think sequels are usually bad. I admit it's not always bad. As an amazing example of a shining and outstanding sequel, that being The Dark Knight with Christian Bale and the late great Heath Ledger, directed by my darling Nolan, is a very, very good movie. A movie I've watched at least 5 times now in my whole life, and me repeating movies, that would be very rare. But my opinion still stands. Sequels are usually not as good as the original. Whether it be the writers, the directors, or the company handling the film project's fault, there's usually something that makes a sequel, for me, flip upside down and become rancid. Now, I'm a horror movie fan, one that doesn't overly criticize every film I've watched and point out something isn't as scary every single second, and I have watched a lot of movies in this beautiful grotesque genre. Whether it be a movie in the mainstream, or a movie that found itself being placed in the disturbing iceberg list, a movie being talked about on TikTok, or just a movie I found randomly in a pirate site, I've watched a lot. But one of my most favorite films in this entire genre has to be The Strangers. The Strangers 2008 follows a newlywed, or maybe not newlywed, I don't exactly remember here, but it follows a couple being terrorized by mass strangers, right? Straight to the point, that's it, highly recommended. I'll be speaking from memory here, but I remember The Strangers being an absolute gem. The very idea of someone knocking on your door in the middle of the night, asking if an individual you don't know is home, is already uneasy enough. The slow but consistent rising of the level of concern that grows in the film before everything launches definitely deteriorated my feeling of safety for these characters. The quiet moments of the film was definitely its greatest part. I mean, we've all seen that one scene. It's even in the poster. And of course, the ending. I'm a sucker for tragic endings, so I definitely enjoyed that. Then there's The Strangers, Pray at Night, 2018. To give you a brief overview of Pray at Night, it follows a family of 4 this time, on a road trip to go on vacation. The same thing happens to them as it did in the original, this time with the setting all over the place instead of taking place in one location like the original. The main difference between the original and Pray at Night is that The Strangers 2008 had a more eerie, serious, and absolutely suspenseful atmosphere. It was the type of movie to watch if you were down to legitimately get a little scared. Pray at Night focused in on being a lot more creative in how it was executed, from the 80s theme music, panning cinematography, varied sets and events. But it did sacrifice or nerf that suspense that Strangers is known for, leaving a lot of fans and myself kind of disappointed. I still welcome them with open arms, but others aren't too fond of the film. Sequels are often never as good as the original, but prequels, however, have a soft spot in my heart. There's something about exploring a universe, lore, or character's history that makes it so fascinating with me, and I think GRRM's work on A Song of Ice and Fire had a lot to do with that. Its rich world filled with so much lore made me desperate for a prequel of Game of Thrones, and I remember being so excited that in 2022, House of the Dragon would drop. So when I heard that The Strangers, one of my favorite horror movies, was getting a prequel after, in my opinion, not so good sequel, I got confused. Didn't all 3 of the Strangers die in the sequel? If this is the prequel, then why do the main characters have modern technology instead of having the appropriate pre-2008 technology? Until I realized that Google lied to me. It's not a prequel, it's a relaunch, a reboot, if you will. I didn't know that at the time, but I was so confused and everything, so I just decided one day to just simply shut up, simply watch it, and just see what it's about. The Strangers, Chapter 1, turns out is a start of a new trilogy, and it certainly was Something. It was a horror movie of all time. I found a lot of similarities with this film and with the original. Both had the signature knocking and asking where Tamara is, the interrupted sex, the second knock, the stranger behind the main character shot, accidentally killing the wrong guy, splitting up, getting killed in the same fashion, pamphlet bros. As I'm listing this down, I'm beginning to think that they had absolutely no originality besides the location being an Airbnb. It wasn't even a reference thing, right? The film itself, I've noticed, is an entirely copy pasted and slightly dumbed down version of the original, to say it politely. Almost event after event is the same with the original The Strangers 2008 and The Strangers Chapter 1. And what I mean by dumbed down version is that in the film, the characters make some incredibly poor and short-sighted choices that made the film a tad bit difficult to watch. Maya's expert gaslighting abilities that she applied to herself, Ryan's main character monologue, the Airbnb owner trying his best to get in the door even though there's a big hole on the door, Maya seeing someone run across the woods and simply staring, and Ryan not believing Maya's claims. When the movie first started, I actually was very interested in how things would turn out. My excitement started to rise as it seemed like a well produced film, but as the film went on and then I saw the questionable decisions that the characters did, my frustrations grew. Like Maya's attempt in gaslighting herself into thinking everything is okay with what I assume to be marijuana. Right before she started smoking, she just experienced the weirdest front door interaction she had for probably her entire life. And to top it off, noises were all over the house. And personally, I would be alarmed at the fact that a weirdo kept banging on my door, and I started hearing noises come from everywhere, and would be a lot more careful in what I do than just simply pop a smoke. And I understand why she did it. She couldn't handle the stress, so she had to smoke to calm herself down. But even then, pretending that the noises aren't everywhere is very strange to me, and going so far as to shower with the bathroom door open and after experiencing everything she had experienced up until now is very weird to me. It's like she's purposely leaving herself vulnerable to these strangers, and it makes me question every decision she makes. Ryan's asthma, I think, was supposed to be present in the story to add more suspense and issues for the characters in the movie. But in my opinion, it wasn't really utilized very effectively at all. It only served as an excuse to split Ryan and Maya apart when Ryan forgot the inhaler in the car, but after that, nothing really came of it. Sure, there's that one scene where he uses the bottle as an inhaler, but that didn't really add anything but remind us he had asthma, and we never got a shot of Ryan realizing he lost his inhaler when he tripped. I expected Ryan to have an asthma attack at some point in the movie, or at least be chased by a stranger and have him fight through his asthma in order to survive, to add more tension to the overall film, but never got that. I feel like Ryan having asthma was a pointless decision, story-wise. But even with all that, I actually found the characters charming a bit. As a couple, being a couple and being cute together was enjoyable to watch for me, and I loved that scene where they were eating burgers together. It was cute. It showed just how much love they had for each other in that one silly interaction they had. Speaking of this scene, I also do kind of find it weird that they never saw the bird hanging on top of them, or even smell it. Whether it be bad writing or the character simply not noticing it because Ryan was trying to calm Maya down, I found it odd. Speaking of odd, after the burger scene is none other than the beginning of the attack. In that scene, a stranger puts a big hole on the door. Later on in the movie, we come back to the front door with the owner of the Airbnb trying to unlock the same door that has a big hole on it with his keys. It's something I didn't pick up on at the time of watching, but after a skim through the film, it did struck me as odd. If he wanted to get in so bad, why didn't he just stuck his arm through? But personally for me, if I come down my house and found a big hole is on my door, I would have just called the police and reported a break-in, or at least be a lot more concerned and check around the house before I go in. But I guess this guy and I aren't the same. To each their own. And since we're talking about characters outside of Ryan and Maya, I don't think the Venus townspeople had any business being so eerie and creepy. I feel like they were only made that way so that the film can establish a feeling of uneasiness, as if the town of Venus was a town no tourist should go to unless they want trouble. But it ended up feeling forced to me. To me, it felt unnatural, unless that's just how all Americans are. The film isn't all that bad though, as the cinematography, while not being the best, still isn't the worst. The actors for Maya and Ryan, Madeline and Foy, I'm gonna say their first names because I have no idea how to say their last names, did a tremendous performance, and the sound design and sound effects, while being a little overused, in my opinion, were done well. The crawl space scene was actually a scene I was into. I enjoyed that moment where Maya accidentally landed her hand on a nail and had to struggle to keep quiet under excruciating pain. All that while Pinup Girl, my personal favorite, stood right on top of them as if she knew but chose to ignore. Admittedly, the ending scene Maya and Ryan had wasn't as impactful as the original. No tears were shed and no care was given by me when they died. I was actually very disappointed in what I was watching, as in the intro, it told me it was the most brutal story they had in store, but the ending is just nothing but a stab at each person and then a kick down to the floor. All in all, if this was some random horror movie that wasn't related to The Strangers, then people would just see this and treat it as a horror flick you'd watch with your friends to have fun, but unfortunately, this isn't some random horror movie. This is The Strangers, a remake of a film that many consider a 10 out of 10 classic. I think to many people, they see this whole thing as unnecessary, and by remaking a classic and not even coming close to the level of quality the original had, made people loathe this film. If a friend wanted to watch this on movie night, then it'll be a great choice in my opinion, because the movie was fun to watch and I honestly did enjoy it. But as a remake to The Strangers, it's a disappointment for many people, including myself. Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad to have been able to finally post a movie review or video essay or commentary video or whatever this is about films I've watched. I hope you enjoy enough to leave a sub. And what are your thoughts on The Strangers?